How a street dog saved a life, even while hungry and hurt. The rain fell hard on the empty street, washing away the scent of food that had led him here. Max pressed his body against the cold brick wall, his ribs showing through his matted fur. 3 days without a real meal. His injured paw throbbed with each heartbeat. But something was wrong. Very wrong. Through the storm he heard it, a sound that made his ears perk up despite his exhaustion. A cry. Weak. Desperate. Human. Most dogs would have turned away, focused on their own survival. But Max wasn't most dogs. Even starving, even hurt, something deep inside him stirred. That cry came from the old apartment building across the street, the one everyone said was abandoned. Someone was in there, someone needed help, and Max, despite everything he was going through, couldn't just walk away. Max had been living on these streets for 8 months now. 8 long months since his family moved away and left him behind. He'd learned the hard way that survival meant staying invisible, staying quiet, staying out of everyone's way. The city wasn't kind to dogs like him. Animal control trucks roamed the neighborhoods. People crossed the street when they saw him coming. Restaurant owners chased him away with brooms and harsh words. He'd grown thin, his golden coat now dirty and scarred from fights with other strays over scraps of food. His left paw still hurt from last week, when he'd stepped on broken glass while digging through a dumpster. The cut was healing, but slowly. Every step reminded him of how vulnerable he'd become. This part of town was particularly rough. Abandoned buildings lined the street like broken teeth. Most people avoided this area, especially at night. But Max had learned that abandoned places sometimes meant abandoned food, forgotten leftovers, a chance at survival. The apartment building across the street stood 5 stories tall, its windows dark and boarded up. The city had condemned it years ago. Everyone knew it was empty. Everyone knew it was dangerous. But that cry, that desperate, human cry, it was real. Max limped closer to the building, his nose working overtime despite the rain. There were scents here, old scents of people who used to live here. But also something else, something recent. Fresh. Someone was definitely inside. The front door hung open just enough for Max to squeeze through. Inside, the building was dark and cold. Water dripped from somewhere above, creating an eerie rhythm that echoed through the empty halls. The smell of mold and decay filled his nostrils, but there was another smell too. Fear. Human fear. Max followed the scent up the stairs, his injured paw making each step painful. The wooden steps creaked under his weight. On the 2nd floor, he heard it again. That cry. It was coming from the end of the hallway. He approached carefully, his survival instincts at war with something deeper. The door to apartment 2B was ajar. Through the gap, he could see a small figure huddled in the corner. It was a little girl, maybe 6 years old. Her clothes were torn and dirty. She was shivering, tears streaming down her face. When she saw Max, her eyes went wide with fear. "Please don't hurt me," she whispered. "I'm sorry I'm here. I didn't mean to bother anyone." Max's heart broke. This tiny human was more scared than he was, more vulnerable than he was. And she was alone in this terrible place. But as he took a step closer, trying to show her he meant no harm, he heard something that made his blood run cold. Heavy footsteps, coming up the stairs. Multiple sets of them. Voices. Adult voices. Angry voices. "She's got to be in here somewhere," one man said. "A little brat can't hide forever. When we find her, she's going to learn what happens to kids who run away from us," another voice replied. Max understood immediately. This little girl wasn't just lost. She was running from something. From someone. And those someones were coming for her. The footsteps grew closer. Max looked at the little girl, then at the door, then back at the girl. Every instinct told him to run. To save himself. He was hungry, he was hurt, he was barely surviving as it was. But something in the girl's eyes stopped him. The same look he'd seen in his own reflection in puddles during those first terrible weeks on the street. Pure, desperate fear. "What's your name?" he seemed to ask with his eyes, tilting his head gently. "Emma," she whispered, as if she could understand him. "My name is Emma." Max made a decision that would change everything. Instead of running, he moved closer to Emma. He positioned himself between her and the door. His weak, injured body became a shield. The footsteps reached their floor. Max heard the men checking each apartment, kicking in doors, searching, "She's here somewhere," one of them said. The neighbor saw her come into this building. Max's mind raced. The building was old, but he'd noticed something when he came in. The apartments were connected through old service corridors, narrow passages that had once been used by maintenance workers. Too small for adult humans, but maybe not too small for a little girl and a medium-sized dog. He nudged Emma gently with his nose, then moved toward the back of the apartment. Behind the old radiator, there was a small opening in the wall. It was covered by a loose piece of plywood. Emma understood. She was smart, this little girl. She followed Max as he carefully moved the plywood aside with his nose and paw, ignoring the pain that shot through his injured foot. The space behind the wall was dark and cramped, but it led to the next apartment, and from there, maybe they could find a way out. But just as Emma started to crawl through the opening, the apartment door burst open. "Well, well, well," a harsh voice said. "What do we have here?" Max spun around to face 3 men. They were big, mean-looking, and they had found Emma. But they hadn't expected to find a dog. "Get that mud out of here," the biggest man said. "We just want the girl." Max didn't understand all the words, but he understood the tone, the threat, the danger. He had a choice to make. He could still run, still escape through that hole in the wall, still save himself. Instead, Max did something that surprised everyone in the room, including himself. He growled. The growl that came from Max's throat was deeper and more fierce than any sound he'd made in months. It was the sound of a dog who had nothing left to lose, the sound of a protector. The men laughed. "You think that skinny mud is going to stop us?" one of them said. But Max wasn't just growling. He was calculating. He might be weak and hurt, but he was also desperate. And desperate animals are dangerous animals. He lunged forward, not to attack, but to distract. He grabbed the first man's jacket with his teeth, pulling him off balance. The man stumbled, crashed into his partner, and both of them went down. "Emma, go!" Max barked, though it came out as urgent whimpering. The little girl scrambled through the hole in the wall. Max followed, just as the third man reached for him. But the narrow passage was harder for Max than he'd expected. His injured paw caught on a piece of broken wood. Pain shot through his leg like fire. He stumbled, fell, and for a moment, he couldn't get up. The men were right behind them now. Max could hear them trying to widen the opening, could hear their angry voices getting closer. Emma had made it to the next apartment. She was safe, for now. But Max was stuck, trapped between the wall and his own injured body. "Go," he whimpered to Emma. "Get out of here." But Emma did something that shocked Max to his core. Instead of running, she came back. This little girl, who had every reason to save herself, crawled back to help a stray dog she'd just met. "I'm not leaving you," she whispered. "You didn't leave me." Together, they made it through the passage. Together, they climbed down the fire escape on the far side of the building. Together, they ran through the rain-soaked streets. But Max was getting weaker. His injured paw was bleeding again. His empty stomach was cramping. He was slowing Emma down, and he knew it. Just when he thought he couldn't go another step, he saw something that made his heart leap. Blue and red flashing lights. Police cars. And standing next to them, a woman in a uniform he recognized. Animal control. But not the kind he'd been running from all these months. This was Officer Sarah Martinez, one of the good ones. The one who left food out for strays, instead of chasing them away. Emma saw the police and ran toward them. "Help!" she cried. "Those bad men are trying to take me back!" As the police officer surrounded Emma, asking her questions, taking her to safety, Max started to back away. His job was done. Emma was safe. It was time for him to disappear back into the shadows. But then Emma did something that changed everything. She pointed at Max. "That dog saved me," she said. "He's hurt and hungry, but he protected me anyway. Please don't let him go back to being alone." Officer Martinez looked at Max with new eyes. She saw past the matted fur and the skinny frame. She saw the gentle soul who had risked everything to save a child. And that's when the real twist came. Officer Martinez pulled out her phone and made a call. "Mrs. Johnson," she said. "I think I found him. I found Max." Max's ears perked up. That name. His name. How did she know his name? "Your family," Officer Martinez said to Max as if he could understand every word. "They've been looking for you for 8 months. They never stopped searching. They never gave up." The reunion happened on a warm Saturday morning, 3 weeks later. Max had spent those weeks recovering at the animal shelter, getting medical care for his paw, gaining weight, and learning to trust again. Emma had been there every day, visiting him, reading him stories, bringing him treats. She'd been placed with a loving foster family, while the police dealt with the men who had been hurting her. She was safe now, really safe, and she made sure Max knew he was part of the reason why. But this morning was special. This morning, Max was going home when the shelter door opened and his original family walked in. Max couldn't believe his eyes. There was James, his boy, now a little taller but with the same kind eyes. There was Mom, with tears streaming down her face. There was Dad, holding a brand new collar with Max's name on it. "We're so sorry, Max," James said, dropping to his knees. "We had to move so suddenly for Dad's job. We looked everywhere for you, but you were gone. We never stopped looking. We never stopped hoping." Max's tail wagged so hard his whole body shook. He was going home. After 8 months of hunger, fear, and loneliness, he was going home. But as they prepared to leave, Max looked back at Emma. She was sitting quietly in the corner, watching the reunion with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Max pulled away from his family and walked over to Emma. He nuzzled her hand gently, as if to say thank you. "Thank you for coming back for me. Thank you for not giving up." "I'm going to miss you," Emma whispered. That's when James spoke up. "Emma," he said, "would you like to come visit Max sometimes? We live just across town from your new family. Maybe you could come over and play with him?" Emma's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Really? You let me visit him?" "Max saved your life," Mom said. "And in a way, you saved his too. You showed everyone what a hero he really is. I think you two have a special bond." And so Max went home to his family. But he also gained something new. A little girl who understood that sometimes the most important thing you can do is refuse to give up on someone who needs you. Every Saturday, Emma would visit. She and Max would play in the backyard, take walks around the neighborhood, and share quiet moments where words weren't needed. Max learned that heroism isn't about being strong or well-fed or unafraid. It's about choosing to help someone else, even when you're struggling yourself. It's about seeing past your own pain to recognize someone else's. And Emma learned that sometimes the best friends come from the most unexpected places, that loyalty and love can be found in the most unlikely circumstances. Max never forgot those 8 months on the street. But he also never forgot the night he chose to save Emma instead of saving himself. Because that night, he discovered something important. When you save someone else, you often end up saving yourself too. In the end, Max was no longer just a pet. He was a hero, a reminder that even when we're hungry and hurt, even when we're at our lowest point, we still have the power to make a difference in someone else's life. And sometimes, that's exactly when it matters most. If Max's story touched your heart the way it touched ours, we'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Have you ever witnessed an act of unexpected kindness from an animal? Or maybe you have your own rescue story to share. Stories like Max's remind us that heroism comes in all shapes and sizes. And sometimes the smallest acts of courage make the biggest difference. If you enjoyed this journey with Max and Emma, consider subscribing to our channel for more heartwarming stories that celebrate the incredible bond between humans and animals. Your support helps us continue sharing these powerful tales of hope, loyalty, and love. And who knows, your own story might inspire our next episode. Until next time, remember that even in our darkest moments, we all have the power to be someone's hero.